Hey, welcome friends, how you going? So nice to see you again. Mark Hummer here, and we're going to discuss some new Nikon releases and some tips and tricks in photography, as I like to do. So today we've got a special announcement from Nikon. It's a release of their 35mm F1.2 prime. Now this is a very exciting lens. It's been on the roadmap for a long time. We've all been anticipating its release to see what was available. They did release the 35 1.4 with its brother lens, the 50 1.4, but that's more of a kit lens thing. It's not their S line, and we were really looking forward to this new S line lens at that very bright aperture. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those 1.4 lenses, but that's not the subject of today. Today is the subject of their top-end primes, the S-line lenses of their highest quality. And that's always exciting to hear about and see what we can do. So in that theme, I'd just like to say that I have owned the 50 1.2, so whether I have the 35 here or not, it doesn't matter. I'm very familiar with this build quality and that structure of a lens. And it's going to be exactly the same as that, only that it'll be a different focal length. So instead of 50mm at f1.2, it'll be a 35, it'll be a bit wider. And that's great, it's very useful for videography. Now, can you use it for photos as well? Of course you can. All these lenses are usable for both video and photos, but for me, in my application and my use scenario, I would be using a 35 mostly for video. Why? Because I have other 35mm lenses anyway. I have this zoom here, this Tamron zoom, 35 to 150. That's at f2, that's quite doable. And of course I also have a 35mm from the Viltrox range, which is a 1.8. So I already have some of those lenses I can use, and I would use them for photos. But the 1.2 was more useful in my character of equipment for video use. So if I'm on the Ronin, I've got a stabilizer of some sort, and I'm doing video and I'm following a subject around. This could be for weddings, it could be receptions, could be at event photography, could be in many different applications, but where you're following someone around with a stabilizer, having that 35mm is fantastic because it does provide you with a great subject isolation. And that's what you're missing out on in video very often. So having that lens at 35mm, you get a wide angle, usable for video, but nice and bright. And that's great in those low light situations. So you won't get a grainy image that's all a bit dark and cloudy. You'll get something pristine, crystal crisp, and it'll be nice and sharp. And it'll make you feel really good about yourself. And when you present the video to people, it's going to look beautiful. So what's the advantages for this? Well, it is a little bit heavier lens, so that's a bit awkward on a stabilizer, a bit more practice in the balancing and the application. Of course, on a tripod, it would make no difference and be no trouble at all. But in my application, I would be using something like this most likely on a stabilizer. And so in that application, having something that bright and wide is fantastic. Now, it's a lot more convenient when you're doing stabilizer work to have a wider lens. So the wider it is, the better. Probably something around 20 to 25mm is amazing. But the problem with this is I want that bright aperture for video, especially in those poor situations when you're inside the doors and it's dark, or you're in a forest or something and it's quite gloomy because of the shade of the trees, and you're not getting a lot of natural light going on. To be able to open up that aperture and get a nice bright image without requiring a great deal of lighting with you is brilliant. Because let's face it, when you're doing stabilization work and moving around, you don't want to carry a whole lot of heavy lights and equipment with you. You want to be flexible, mobile, and on the go. So that aperture is going to make life so much easier and better for you. And having had the 1.2 and the 50mm, I understand exactly that look and application. So I think it's a fantastic lens, and I'm going to give it thumbs up. Now, I love the fact that Nikon often fulfill their promises. They are mostly doing that, aren't they? So it's very good. They might take a while to bring something out, but if they promise you some goods, they deliver on those goods, and I'll give them high credit for that. And the goods that they do provide are always excellent and of high quality, and you're never ashamed to own them. They're always a brilliant masterpiece of design. So I'm very excited about this lens. Now, does that mean, however, that I'm going to buy it? Well, that's a consideration. However, it is quite expensive. And that's the only one downfall. It's not the build quality, it's not the optical quality, it's not the aperture, it's not the weight even. None of that makes any difference. It's the sheer price of them are very hard to justify. So at about $4,300 Australian, as it's been promised to be, or about $2,500 US, that's very, very expensive for me to outlay for something I use on occasionally for video. what other options are there, you might say, if this lens is so great and you really need it for what you're doing? Well, there is a second option coming out maybe in 6 months or so, and that is with my brand. The brand I often favour is the Viltrox, for value for money. Not necessarily build quality or image quality, although it is exceptionally good, but the value for money is astounding. Now you've got to understand that Viltrox has promised that they might be bringing out a 35, a 50 and an 85mm at f1.2 as well. They're pro-level versions of that. So it won't be their budget versions, I'm talking about their pro-level ones, and I'll illustrate what I'm talking about. This here is the consumer version of a Viltrox lens. It retails about to $400, $500 Australian. And this one here, which is the 16mm, this is the f1.8, ultra wide. This is their lab series, or their pro series if you like, and this one here was about twice as expensive. So this is their high quality, where they throw everything at it, make it as good as they can lens, and still make it affordable. This is the sort of quality that we'll be talking about with their Viltrox 35, 50 and 85 f1.2s when they come out, and that'll probably be 6 months or so behind Nikon. So Nikon will do a brilliant job, and they have something available for you straight away if you want it. But if you're willing to save a bit of money, and that's important to you, as it is to me, I mean, I like value. I don't like throwing money away for no particular reason. If I can get these Viltrox lenses, and I can get, say, for example, for the same money as one Nikon lens, I can get a 35 and an 85, or a 50 and an 85, or a 30 and a 50, or whatever combination I happen to want, both at 1.2, and for the same money I'm getting two for the price of one, because they're going to be half the price of the Nikon ones. Well, that's something I'm worth holding out for. So that's just a consideration. If you've got the money, you've got the wallet to buy the Nikon ones, well, I highly recommend you do so, because it's going to be the better build quality, it's going to be the better look and better structure. But for only a 5 or 10% compromise in build quality and image quality, you can save yourself half the money. Well, I think it's a great idea. So that's just something to consider. But again, raving on Nikon for delivering on their goods and their promises, and bringing out what they say they will, and of that high quality. Now, another lens Nikon have just brought out very recently is an exciting one. It's a zoom. So it's sort of similar. I haven't got it with me, of course. It's not even released yet. But it's similar to this one here. Over a Tamron, it's a 35 to 150mm. This is an f2 to 2.8, so it's a very bright aperture zoom. But it's a brilliant zoom, works really well. But the zoom that they're bringing out is a 28 to 135mm, and it's an f4. And it's predominantly a video lens, and I say that because it's got the power zoom feature. Now, what's with this power zoom? What does that all mean? Well, it's a wonderful option, it really is, because it means that when you want to zoom in on a subject, rather than trying to hand hold it and you're turning the zooming ring in and out, trying to extend and get that smooth and fluid, that's actually very difficult to do physically. So yeah, you can make it reasonable, and if you've got a very high quality product, that'll make it a bit easier. But it's just the mechanics of your hand and your muscle movement. Your muscle movement is going to be a little bit jerkier than an electric motor running it for you. And so you get this beautiful consistent electric motor powering that zooming feature in and out for you, and make it a very smooth transition from near to far. And in videography, that's really important to make it smooth and fluid. It's also why you have things like the Steadicams and image stabilization, because you want everything smooth and fluid. You don't want jerky footage. So if you have that option where you need zooming in on a subject, that's a great option. Now, there are other ways around that, of course, as I've mentioned. You can just try and have a steady hand. You can have various apparatus, or mechanical apparatus, to help you with the zooming features, little wheels with gears and so on that help. But there's nothing like an electronic power zoom. That's just a far superior system. So the fact that they provide you now a lens with a great range, think about that range, 28, which is very wide, all the way to 135 mils, that's fantastic. So that's like a one lens does all. The only negative aspect I could put to this is it's f4 and not, say, a 2.8. But still, look, f4 is great for video and works really well. So it makes sure everybody's in focus and they're sharp, and you're not having to do an entire elaborate scene all over again. If we've missed some sort of fine focus point, you've got everything in focus and you're happy with it. So you can get a good look with that. It'll be nice and sharp. It's got Nikon beautiful build quality. I think it's a fantastic thing. Now, they don't actually claim it to be a cine lens per se, cinema lens, but obviously that's the purpose and plan for it. Having that power zoom feature is a dead giveaway. So maybe they've got a second thing in mind in the future. Maybe what they're doing is this could be, oh, it's not a very cheap lens, probably $4,000 Australian when it comes out, but even though it's of a reasonable price for a cinema lens, that's dirt cheap. Maybe they will even in the future bring out a high-end line because of this association with RED cameras now. So with the RED video-centric cameras, obviously they need a video-centric line of lenses. And this could be just the first stepping in the water, if you like, and taste and see how people go with it, a sample. And then maybe in the future they'll bring in very high-end S-line versions of this, very similar to, how can I illustrate it? It's like, you know how you have the 180 to 600 mil VR telephoto lens, and then they have the very high-end S-line lenses. They've got the 400 and 600 TC lenses. The difference in prices, the zoom I mentioned originally, 180 to 600, is about $3,000 Australian. The TC lenses, 400 and 600 TC, about $23,000 each. So the difference in price is astronomical. But of course the quality and the options you get are astounding as well. So it's horses for courses how much you want to spend. I wouldn't be surprised if Nikon, with their brilliance at lens manufacture, will actually go into these cine lenses, and they might be a lot more expensive in the future. So we'll see how that works out, what range they come out with. Do they come out with primes as well? Do they come out with very high-end options that maybe at F2.8 as well? That'll be exciting to see what the future holds for it. But right now we've got a sample, haven't we? Something to start with that's very versatile. And so that's an exciting lens. Again, if you ask me, will I be getting it? At the moment, I can't say. Right now, I'm very happy with the products I have. And be honest with you, I don't do a lot of zooming in. If I do zooming in, it's usually done with my feet. That is, I'll have a prime on a stabilizer and I will simply walk in closer to the subject, and that's how I zoom in smooth and steady. So at the moment I'm very happy with using that, but that's because of course I didn't have the option of a power zoom of that quality. So now it's available, that might be an exciting option. I'll have to give that some time and think about it, and of course listen on the reviews of people who have handled it to see if it's worth getting. But from surface value, from what I've seen and heard and read about it, it looks a very exciting option. So that's some options that have come out lately that are very exciting, and I'm very pumped that Nikon are delivering on their promises and maybe really utilising this collaboration with RED. That's very exciting indeed. A lot in the future, isn't there? Now, while we're talking about zooms, and I'll just vary off a little bit out of the subject to give you a little amusing anecdote. The other day I had a zoom, and I was to have this lens off and put another one on. So my wife came to me and said, "Oh, Mark, some really nice photography outside for you. Quick, bring your zoom lens and take some photos." And from the description of what she was talking about, I knew I would need this longer telephoto lens. So that was not on the camera. This one, the 35 to 150 was, and in the hurry and haste and the rush of the moment, I put the lens off, I put it down, handling this one at the same time. This one, of course, has the handle, doesn't it? And you know what the handle does? It's very interesting. It works sort of like a handbrake. So let's say you've got the lens and you put it on the table, it stops it rolling. Put it this side, it stops. It doesn't go very far. It goes a few inches and stops. It's quite a safe mechanism. Obviously you should put it up here like this where it's nice and safe, but in the spur of the moment, if you do put it down somewhere, it doesn't go far. It's quite safe to place down. I was thinking along those lines when I took this one off and I put it on the table, and as you can see, it's just starting to roll off, and before I realised it, off the table it went and it hit the floor. Now it was about a 2.5 feet, less than a metre drop, and it's on a carpeted floor. Now that sort of helps a bit, I suppose, but it still was a nasty thud, and I got a big fright. I thought this quite expensive lens was toast and was going to be wrecked. Fortunately, after extensive testing, I tested at every aperture, focal length, and did video and photos, and found that it was completely flawless and it's not been damaged at all. So that was a great sigh of relief. But at the same time, the lesson to learn is be very careful when you're handling your lenses. If you're going to take lenses on and off, always make sure you have them on a flat surface. Put them face down so they're safe, or even back down like that, and they're not going to go anywhere. None of this putting them on the table where they can roll and get damaged. So that was something I did foolishly in haste, and I put my hand up. I'm an idiot. I understand it's completely my fault, but it was nice to know at least that this Tamron lens is 35 to 150 was a very robust build and held up to the drop. So that was good news. Shows that they make a decent product, and I was very fortunate that I didn't lose one. So I'm pleased with that, but it's a lesson to be learned. Be very careful in handling your lenses. If possible, just put them straight into a camera bag where they're nice and safe. You spend a lot of money on them, you don't want to destroy them quickly. So that was a positive experience, so I'm happy that that worked out well. It was a fright, but it didn't turn out badly. Now, while we're talking about positive experiences, there was one other positive experience I've had personally, and that is I finally got over 1,000 subscribers. Now, that's only 1,000 subscribers. Many would say, oh, that's nothing, no big deal. I know people with 100,000 subscribers. Well, that's fair enough too, and I know of these people as well, and they've done very well. I'm happy for them. But for me, this is just my little milestone. I've got a modest little channel, and I was very happy just to achieve that goal. That was something I was hoping to achieve very soon. It happened in 2025 early, so I'm very excited about that. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your support. The fact that you're clicking that subscribe button is a real blessing for me, and I notice it. Don't worry, every time those numbers tick over 1 or 2 or 3, even with the likes and the comments, it's all noticed and observed, and it's really appreciated. Any communication or dedication you give is really gratefully accepted. So thank you for that. The other news, I suppose, has been talking about a P1100. That's a kit camera, has the lens built into the camera as well, and it has this massive zoom range. So I think it's something like 24 to 3,000 millimeters in zoom range. This is not really a camera I'm interested in. I can see it could be an interesting starting camera, could be interesting for holidays or something you want, just the incredible versatility, but I can't see any reason I'm ever going to need, 3,000 millimeters. And trying to get a steady shot at that is near impossible. I don't care what stabilization you're using, even if you're using a tripod. Things such as heat haze, any sort of vibration or movement, it just makes it almost unusable. But in the range from, say, 24 to 1,000, that could be very useful. So anyway, it's an interesting product, not in my ballpark of looking at 14 megapixels. Not particularly impressive for me, and the fact that look, it does do 4K video, so that's useful. So as a travel item or a first camera buy, okay, I can see the point to that, but it's not my cup of tea. So that's just really summarizing up all the news I have at the moment. Thank you for hearing me out. I do appreciate your support, and anytime you want to ask me a question or give me a comment in any way, I'll gratefully receive it. So thank you for tuning in today. It was just a brief video summarising those new products released. I look forward to getting my hands on at least one of them, and then we can talk further about them. So thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful week. All the best to you. Bye-bye.